So, hi guys. So, last video we saw about how the NAT gateway works. So, in this video we will see the how interface endpoint works in AWS. Okay. So, so this playlist is all about the VPC networking and content delivery. Okay. So, in this networking concepts, what we are discussing every day, there is a topic called interface endpoint. Okay. So we'll see the definition. An interface endpoint in AWS allows you to privately connect your VPC to AWS services like S3 or DynamoDB without using the public internet. So instead, the traffic between your VPC and AWS services stays entirely within the AWS service network, making it more secure and faster. Okay. So what the definition says is in AWS, okay, so usually in general, if we have in our VPC, if we want to establish a connection between internet and private subnet, what we do, we use VPC endpoint, router, we use router, and from the router, we'll connect to internet gateway and we connect to internet, right? So that is the standard we follow. But here, what is happening is the data is exposed to the internet, okay, where if we want to connect to AWS service, okay, so to eliminate this, we use interface endpoint, okay. So this is a diagram, so I'll explain you in detail, okay. So we have a AWS inside which we have VPC, we have subnet, okay, this is subnet 2 and subnet 1, inside which we have our EC2 machine, okay. This is under private subnet. If we want to connect to any AWS services, what we do traditional way is a router will connect. What router will do? It will request the traffic to the internet gateway, and the internet gateway will communicate with internet, and the internet will connect and connect and establish an connection to AWS services, right? So this is how it happens. Okay, but to eliminate this, the data has been exposed to internet. So to eliminate this, what we do, we use this interface endpoint, so in which that it will establish a connection within this AWS network. Okay. So how it works, key points, everything will in detail I will explain. Okay. Private communication. So what happens here is within an interface endpoint, and your EC2 instance can communicate with your AWS services directly through a private IP in your VPC, ensuring that the traffic does not go over the internet. So what happens is instead of going this way, we will connect to our AWS services like S3 DynamoDB using this VPC endpoint. So private communication will happen within the AWS network. That is what this private communication this defines. Okay, where the traffic will does not go over the internet, which means the traffic will not get exposed to the internet. It will be under the AWS network itself. Okay, the communication will be. So next point says elastic network interface, which means the interface endpoint creates an elastic network interface in your subnet, which provides a private IP address for communication with the service. Okay. So here we use one elastic network interface in our subnet, which provides a private IP. So we want to connect to VPC endpoint, we need private IP address, right? So this is provided by this elastic network interface. Okay. So using which we'll get the IP address and we'll communicate with the AWS services. So next is security. Since the traffic never leaves AWS internal network, it improves security by reducing the exposure of your data to the public internet. So I don't need to explain much, I believe because this secure, I mean, this is very straightforward, you know. Since the traffic never leaves the AWS internal network, since internal network means, see, this is the AWS, right? So this is the internal network. The communication happening within this AWS network. It's not going outside. I mean, the traffic is not going outside. So the connection between the AWS services and the subnet, I mean, the instance is happening inside the AWS network only. So that is what it is telling here. Okay. Next is cost efficient. You don't need to set up a NAT gateway or use internet gateway for accessing services like S3, which can help save costs, especially for large volume of data transfer. So this NAT gateway and internet gateway I've explained in my previous videos. Okay, if you, I mean, if you have any doubt or like if you want to know about the NAT gateway, you can check my previous videos. Okay, so in this point, what it says, you don't need to set up a NAT gateway or use internet gateway for accessing services like S3, which can help save cost, especially for large volumes of data transfer. Usually, to establish a connection, we use NAT gateway, but using this endpoint, right? So we no need to use all those things. Just establish a connection within the AWS network. So that's it. So supported service. So what all the services are supported are when we use this endpoint interfaces, Amazon S3, DynamoDB, SQS, SNS. So for these all services, which will support a connection, establish a connection between the AWS services using the endpoint. Okay. So this example use case, you can see, suppose you have a database, okay, that is running in a private subnet. So that need to store files in S3. So using an interface endpoints, so which will allow the database to send and receive data from S3 securely without exposing any traffic to the public internet. Says, so I have a database. Okay, so I want to connect to, I have a subnet in which one database is running. Okay, so I want to send and receive data to AWS service called S3. Okay. So how I make establish a connection? So I use the interface endpoint. So this will allow the database to send and receive data from S3 securely without exposing any traffic to the public internet. Okay. So in summary, interface endpoints provide a secure, private, and cost-effective way to connect your VPC to various AWS services without relying on the public internet. So, from which we ensure better security and performance. Okay. So this is all about the interface endpoint, guys. So in next video, I'll come with a new topic on VPC networking and content delivery. Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.